Welcome to episode 7 of Bloggers Are Weird. I'm your host, DJ Paris of thoughtsfromparis.com, and I'd like to start out the show by saying thank you to everyone who's supporting this podcast by buying our sponsors' products, also passing the show on to friends, family, grandma, probably not grandma, but also just those of you who listen. I really appreciate it. Everything you do helps, and I honor you for it. Today we have a very first blog I ever started reading, which is ohnoah.com, and we have the host of that blog and the head writer, the only writer, Noah Gavin. You probably know her from the website or her organization, the League of Funny Bitches, which, by the way, I have been trying and lobbying to be part of for like 2 years now, and she still hasn't accepted me in. I'm not happy about it. But anyway, we talk about blogging, her background in improv and sketch, also being one of the Blog Her Voices of the Year. It's a fun interview, and I'm very happy and proud to call her a friend. So go grab a Sex on the Beach or whatever your drug of choice is. Mine is a video game called Okami. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. Today's podcast is sponsored by romance-text.com. Looking to reignite the passion in your relationship? You have to check out romance-text.com. This is how to use text messages to bring back the passion and reignite the spark you once had. Now, if you're thinking this sounds cheesy, or maybe it's just learning how to send dirty text messages, it's actually not. This program by relationship expert Michael Fiore has been featured in over 200 television and radio shows. This program has a money-back guarantee, is normally $97, but listeners of Bloggers Are Weird get a special price of only $47 for the entire program. By purchasing the program, you help support this show. Visit romance-text.com and get the passion back.
Well, I have to tell you that I was a little bummed when I went to blog her, and I knew 3 people. I knew I knew the Aiming Low people because I don't know them, but I knew that they were going to be there. But then I knew Redneck Mommy had sent me some messages, so I knew who Tanis was. I knew you. Mm-hmm. And I think I knew Layla from Don't Speak Whinies, whatever. I knew like 3 people, and only one of them I got to talk to. I was like, oh, I'm going to meet Noah Gavin. I was so excited, and then we never got to meet.
I swear that I saw you when we were, it was at the, the big thing. Sometimes
the awards.
Yeah, it was the Voice of the Year. Thank you. I was one. You'd think I could remember that. So, Voice of the Year, and I was back in the back recording when Elizabeth was speaking, and as I was going to the front, I looked over and like 20 feet away, I was like, there's one dude here, and it's you. And I was like, oh, cool, that's him. And then Jen from Portlandia Mom, she was like, hey, come back over here and sit down. You're standing and interrupting everyone's night. You're right. So sat down, and by the time I got turned around, you were gone. And I was like, well, fuck. And then there's no finding anyone after that.
No. This is really funny. So I had Elizabeth on as my first guest. By the way, I'm speaking with Noah Gavin from ohnoah.com. That's ohnoa.com. You probably already read her. I know I read her. I'm a huge fan. But when we were when I launched this podcast, I only was introduced to Elizabeth through her Voices of the Year, which you were just speaking of. So I contacted her and I said, I'd really like you to read something. I'm launching this podcast. And she said, oh, do you know who Noah Gavin is? And I said, yeah. Oh, yeah. I said, I love Noah Gavin. She said, well, I was her first guest on her podcast. And I went, oh, no. Not oh, no, that you had a podcast. But I thought, oh, now she's going to think I'm ripping off her idea. And I had no idea you had a podcast. So I didn't think, because I don't know anything about anyone. And so I thought, oh, my God, she's going to. So I wrote you that email saying, please don't think I'm, trying to steal your idea.
So sweet. That's really rare that people do that. And Nick Mom got accused of plagiarism a little while back, and I kind of got all up in arms about like, hey, just because somebody has a similar idea to yours and also puts that up doesn't mean that that's plagiarism. So it was so funny because you were like, please don't think I was going to steal your idea. It was like, my podcast is now defunct, and it was pretty bad when I did it. So you didn't hurt my feelings at all.
But what are the odds, though, that we both chose the same person as our first guest? I mean, it's not like I knew her. I'd never talked to her. Like, that's pretty unusual.
pretty rare. But she's also freaking awesome. So I can imagine that you would want her as your first guest. She's very, very cool. And she has such a cool, like, voice. The voice that I had in my head when I would read her blog before I ever spoke to her was completely different than the voice she actually has. She has this very kind, like, even voice. And then when you hear her call somebody a motherfucker in that voice, it's maybe the funniest thing I've ever heard.
It's so funny. When I talked to her for the first time, she was just so sweet and sort of demure and just very, very like, oh, tell me all about you, DJ. What do you do? It was just so sweet, and I thought, this is not the same voice I'm hearing. And then, you know, she's just great. I just love everything about her.
She's so sweet. I love Elizabeth. She's fabulous. And that post she was the reason that I got to be Voice of the Year. Not a whole lot of people don't know that, but it was 2 years ago. It was the 2011 Voice of the Year that I was chosen as one of the readers. And she contacted me one day. She called me and she's like, hey, have you ever heard of this Voice of the Year thing? Why don't we do this? Let's nominate each other. And I was like, all right, cool. And so she told me what post she was going to do for me, and she picked out a few, and I did the same for her. And then that year she was chosen as one of the top 10, but not a reader. And I was chosen as one of the readers. And then the very next year, she got to be Voice of the Year. So she was the reason that I got my job with Nick Mom, because I got to talk to them at BlogHer after they heard that post. So I owe Elizabeth a lot, actually. She's a very nice person, and she's fabulous.
So what post do you have that you're going to read for us today?
I have a post called The South Dakota Trail Leads You to Hell, which is one of my favorite stories because it's a story that my family hadn't even heard. Nobody had really heard me tell the story before. But I remember it being a very pivotal moment in my life and the reason why I hate a lot of things that I currently hate.
Well, it's yours. Go ahead.
Excellent. I once had an existential crisis at a chuck wagon dinner and show in South Dakota. If you've never had the pure joy of being on such a dinner, then hold on to your tits, Betsy, because I'm about to shake the foundations of everything you consider fun. You pay some dickhole $40 per person to sit in a Home Depot Conestoga. There's usually some cowboy tomfoolery, possibly a shootout in which, disappointingly, no one dies. And then you eat the shittiest food you could possibly imagine while people from Ohio make believe John Wayne. If you pay $50, you get to eat around a Duralog campfire while swatting away grasshoppers and feelings of wanton despair. I hate it so, so much. We'd already been on 3 other chuck wagon dinners in 3 states, each one more kitschy than the last. This one promised to be different because they advertised that it was a location where they filmed Dances with Wolves, my sister's favorite movie. Filled with visions of Tatanka and movie sets, we paid Union Soldier Private Acne Prone, and he mumbled while pointing at a rickety shack. Upon entering said shanty, we noticed 50 Midwesterners wildly photographing a post-it note scotch-taped to the floor. On this note was scrawled, in a couple of pens that were nearing the end of their existences, Kevin Costner stood here once. The hate began to rise in my 12-year-old heart. It was the room where they filmed one 9-second scene filled with no other indication of its movie history. I was done, and no one had called me lily-livered for not wanting to eat any cornbread yet. Fuck this place, I whispered, and Grace stared me down. Just smile and deal with it. This is some bullshit, and you know it, Grace. She was silent. She did know it. It was bullshit, and it was only going to get worse. We were herded into a waferboard prairie schooner because realism, you guys, by a recently immigrated nebulously Asian cowboy who insisted that we were going to have a rootin'-tootin' cowboy shootin' good time. Live, across the board. Pulled by one mangy fucking donkey and what I suspect was a massively deformed camel, the Triumph of the Prairies drove us across the parking lot to the Wild Ass Saloon and Hate Buffet. At the head of the buffet line, we were handed a very thin metal plate and cup, and we were told to move quickly through the line. To save time, I immediately placed my cup on my plate, and a hair-netted she-beast ripped it right back off. Your plate will be full of the put your cup back on. Not 1 second after my prepubescent hands had wrapped back around the cup, the she-beast dumped a ladle full of searing hot beans into a handleless metal cup at the beginning of the line. Motherfucker! This just seared off my handprint, I shouted, no longer giving any fucks who heard me. My mom, who under normal circumstances would have beat me to death for that, just shook her head in solidarity. These beans are hot, I shouted at the she-beast. Yeah, they're beans. What do you expect? Yeah, not to put them in a metal cup. Just keep the line moving. Fucking whore. The metal plate was soon filled with corn, brisket, hot-ass apple cobbler, and cornbread. She ain't no real cowboy if she don't eat no cornbread. The cup of lava beans burned through all the layers of my skin and were now charring bone. At the end of the line, Ernie Oakley hatefully shook a cup of lemonade at me. How exactly am I supposed to carry that? The bitch shoved the cup right on top of my beans, which set the still-on-fire beans overflowing onto my hand, mimicking the fountain of disbelief in my soul. It was then that I started to laugh, because in the deepest parts of despair, that's all I know how to do. What the fuck was even happening? I wasn't convinced that these people were real anymore, because no one was capable of niceness or forethought or even a production that might hint towards being Western in any way. As I burned my digestive those goddamn beans, a cowboy approached us with a microphone. He shoved it in Grace's face and asked her to sing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star and was not pleased when she called him on it and did. Then he turned to me, hoping to catch some yokel in embarrassment, and demanded I sing Get Along Little Doggies. I stared him down like a cornered wolf for an uncomfortable amount of time, daring him to keep asking me, What's wrong, little lady? Prairie dog got your tongue? Alright, fuck this noise. I shoved my maimed hand into his microphone, which slammed delightfully onto his lopsided mustache face and rang out my rage to the entire banquet hall. I stormed out indignantly and sat on the porch of the wild-ass saloon. My mom strolled out to make sure that I wasn't planning to run away to California for gold / drowning myself in the ocean. He's going to make us watch the show, you know. I know. I don't care. I refuse to go back in and make those bastards think this is okay. Alright, are your hands okay? No, but if you need me to rob a bank or murder someone soon, let me know, because I'll never have fingerprints again. Well, at least you're looking on the bright side. She left me to stew in my own rage. South Dakota had already been a smorgasbord of utter terribleness, and now we were there eating magma, being harangued by Michael Landon fanboys while high school drama rejects sat astride sawhorses and sang Rawhide. My entire childhood was nicely summed up by this experience. Forced, uncomfortable, and usually Western-themed fun had only by my stepdad, and the rest of the family using sarcasm as a defense mechanism to fend off the awfulness. I'd never felt more further from my faith than at this moment. Surely all of these events that led up to this were punishment for some deed that wronged Jesus. Is this what happens to people who, while dressed as presents for the church Christmas pageant, slam into the baptismal font and shout, God damn it, in front of their pastors? I pondered my hate and regret for everything that had apparently led to this night when the truth dawned on me. This was all Kevin Costner's fault. Kevin Costner was the reason why we were here, the reason that I was burned, the reason why everything had gone wrong in my life. He's a terrible actor and a giant asshat, and oh, how I wish he was here for me to whip beans at him while shouting, Your beans are hot! Kevin Costner was the source of all bad things in the universe. Kevin Costner is my Satan. I felt a little lighter then, throwing anything I could pick up towards the shanty, cursing in the name of Costner. I never let go of that hate. To this day, whenever anything goes wrong, I blame Kevin Costner. What an asshole.
So, how did you get into blogging?
Purely by accident. I've had my blog for about 3 years now. And at that time I was working with my husband, at the martial arts school that he owned, which meant that we were together 24 hours a day. And I thought I was going to hurt myself, because I love him very much, but I can't handle being around anyone for that long. So I decided that I needed to do something, anything at all, to kind of assuage what I was doing and having to deal with so much bullshit at the same time. So I started a blog after reading Hyperbole and a Half and The Bloggess. And I thought that they were really, really fabulous. And I thought, hey, that looks like fun. They just write down their fun stories and for other people to laugh at. I thought that would be pretty cool. So I started that. And then it just kind of grew from there. It started to get where a few more people would read and a few more people would read. And then I met Elizabeth, who, with her, she decided, to help me, encourage me to advertise on the Bloggess. And I got more and more eyes. And then I started the League of Funny Bitches, which got more and more. And I realized, hey, this is actually really fun, and I really like this. I think I'm pretty funny, so I decided I want to do this for a living. And that's how I got into everything else that I do, improv and sketch and working for Nick Mom, and it all came because I was going to murder my husband in the night if I had to be with him for 24 hours a day anymore.
So tell us, how did the League of Funny Bitches come about?
I was just kind of reading something online about, hey, if you should try and get a group of people together if you have a blog, and it would be fun. Back when I was reading about how to blog, because I didn't know how. And I thought, yeah, that would be kind of fun, and didn't really think much about it until I realized that a lot of my favorite blogs that I were reading hadn't been updated in upwards of 6 months. Usually a year or more, and some of them were just completely defunct. They just never updated ever again. And I started to realize it was because they never got any eyes. Nobody ever read their stuff because they didn't know it was out there. Either they weren't marketing themselves or people just didn't know what was happening. And I decided that sucked and that I didn't want that to happen to other people, that if they were really funny, they should have somebody reading them, and it shouldn't be just because they're not marketing themselves. Or they don't want to. A lot of people are really, really shy about marketing themselves because they don't think what they have is good. And I disagree. So I started the League of Funny Bitches to help get some eyes on some people, because they really deserve it. These people are really funny. They work really hard, and they just need a little bit of a push, and whatever little bit of push that I can give them, and granted, being featured on the League isn't much of a push, but it's something, and that helps. And that can help give them motivation to keep writing and keep going. When you are a blogger or a comedian, you're really putting yourself out there, and the only way that you can feel like it's worth it to keep going sometimes is when even just one person thinks you're really funny. So I want other people to feel that too.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I write every day, and when I get home from work, and then the other half of the time I spend is actually promoting. I make sure that my stuff is in front of as many eyeballs as possible. And I really encourage bloggers to do the same. I think many of them are great creatively, but aren't so good on the promotion side, or, whether they're scared to do it or they just don't know how. And when you have these groups like League of Funny Bitches, or maybe you're part of some private Facebook group, it's so huge to have others people support you, in the area maybe where you're not as strong, so that you can have other people promote for you. I use a few programs that sort of do that for me as well, and I think it's awesome.
Yeah, marketing can be kind of an intimidating thing, because when you're blogging, you're not necessarily blogging a product or trying to market for somebody else, because it's easy to tell somebody else why somebody else is awesome. You can tell your friends why you like AT&T or whatever, but trying to tell them what's good about you, we've been taught to be humble, and so that's really intimidating. And they don't understand that marketing is not the same as bragging. I can tell people that I have a new post without being, a huge jerk about it, being like, this is funny shit you've ever read. Because I also don't think that's true. My shit is not that funny most of the time. But I can tell people about it. And I hate that people get so nervous about, all my stuff isn't funny. Well, let other people be the judge of that, and let me help you get in front of them, and then give you the push to market yourself. Because once you can market yourself, man, then the game has changed completely. So
you had a post that went viral. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, weirdly so. It's called "Oh Good, You Saved Your Bullshit." If you go to ohnoah.com and look at the upper right side, there's a little tab called Noah's Greatest Funny above my header, and it's on there. It was featured on the front page of Fark, and also got me the Voice of the Year nomination, which is fantastic. There's a blog called The Burning House Project, which is still in operation, and they have a book coming out, which is baffling, and it's a hipster art project. The idea is, if you had the time, what would you save from your house? And it's all very, it's fine and good. Objectively, it's fine. People want to save, memorable things, a jacket and an oar, or a photo of your parents, or all these slides and this vintage camera. It's hipster bullshit, which, whatever. But what pissed me off is the fact that I've had 2 houses burned down in my life. When I was in 3rd grade and when I was a freshman in college, my house burned down, and I lost everything both times. So I know exactly what I would take out of my house in a fire, and it's all in my desk in my front office. I know exactly where everything is. And so I was laughing because it was like, man, if if you're going to search around for your fucking ore in a fire, like, you're going to die in a fire, and that's a horrible thing to want to take with you. Like, nothing is that valuable. Basically, the only thing that I would take is my dog, my cats, and my laptop, because my laptop has everything on it, and then the rest of my shit can burn. So I got kind of pissed off about it one day, because I thought it was ridiculous, and I wrote a post making fun of them, and about all their stupid, shitty choices. And people thought it was really funny. I didn't know that what I had on my hands, I guess, because I just kind of wrote it in 20 minutes. I wrote it really fast. Most of that time was setting up my satirical photo of what I would take in a fire, which involves like 7 sour gummy worms and a couple of tea bags and a broken reindeer Pez dispenser, and Spaceballs, the world's greatest movie. Most of that time I spent setting up that photo, so I wrote it really quickly, and it was huge. Everybody really, really laughed at it and really liked it. So it's done really well for me, making fun of other people's shitty choices.
That's great. I know you advertise on the blog S. I used to do the same, and I used to just get amazing traffic from her. It is amazing, when we latch, when we connect with the people who are legitimately funny, and they're just, I don't know what, I'd like to get your perspective on it. I just don't think there are that